So first and foremost, I'm so inspired, so deeply, deeply inspired by what I heard this morning. This last panel, who can't believe el futuro es femenina? Yes? I said to Adriana at the break, everybody says, si se puede. Well, they may replace that with el futuro es femenina. That may be what everybody's saying around the world from now on because of you and your future. I mean, I was so inspired by this last panel. I felt like what the panelists were saying and the questions that were asked is what all of us are feeling. I took notes. We have to tell our own story. We have to be collaborative and not competitive. We have to be empathic. We need to be the listeners who truly listen, and we have to think about the purpose of our institution over everything else. That is the future. And you are the future. To be invited to be here today, truly, as I was sitting and listening, it's one of the greatest honors I could ever imagine. So thank you for inviting me. Arturo, thank you for asking me. And when Arturo said, would you please come speak on the 11th, I said, the Consul General of Israel asked me to fly to Israel on the 11th and to speak with all the university presidents in Israel. And when Arturo asked me to speak here today, I said, whoever says no to Arturo Trubowski? Ergo, Arturo, thank you for asking me, and thank you for hosting this. You're amazing. Thank you. And I also want to say, and I apologize for my pronunciation, Presidente Claudia Susana Gomez Lopez, you are leading a phenomenal university, and you are leading this conference today with others, and I thank you for what you're doing. Thank you. So, nobody really wants to listen to anybody for 2 hours, except maybe Taylor Swift for 2 hours. But I'm not Taylor Swift, and we're going to have some interactive so that it's not just about me and my thoughts, but also about you and some of your own personal stories as well. So I have to point to you, right? I thank you for teaching me. So the topic of our speech today is how you as women can lead with principle, integrity, courage, and vision. That embodies everything that we really are all about, how to lead, make a difference, and lead with integrity, with principle, always wearing our bifocals, meaning, if I said that to my children, bifocals, they would say, bifocals? What are bifocals? That's old people stuff. Is this being translated correctly? I hope so. And I hope my introduction, because I don't speak Spanish, thank you, Adriana, for that introduction. I'm sure it was perfect. Thank you. So when we wear our bifocals as leaders of institutions, we have to always be looking down and looking out. Everybody's depending on us to manage the moment and to lead with vision for the future. That is our job. How we do it as women, that's what's going to make the difference for the future. And I know that looks pretty small in the back, so I'm not going to depend on the slides. I'm going to depend more on what I'm saying. But just so you know, here are the things that we're going to be covering for the period of time that I'm up here. Leadership trends for female presidents and male presidents. I'll talk a lot about publications that have come out last year and this year. Another book, comparing female presidents to male presidents. Every one of us has our own leadership journey. There's some trends that are the same, and there's some that are very particular to each one of us. So I want us to embrace our journeys, to be proud of our journeys, and to be able to share our journeys. One of the panelists in the last session said we have to share our stories. We need to be the example of when we've tripped and fallen, and when we've stood up and had great successes. All of that is who we are, and it's very important. I want us to identify pivotal markers in our own leadership journey, because somebody in the last panel, I don't even need to be here because that last panel was so great. Somebody in the last panel said something about, I think it was Tere, but from our childhood, we are who we are because of so many influences from when we were young. So I want us to take a moment and look back at those pivotal moments in our own journeys, because that's what shaped who you are and who we are today. I want us to identify some of our own leadership attributes. I'm going to have a portion of this about the culture of philanthropy. Higher education is changing. In the U.S., philanthropy, donor giving, very important, especially at private universities, because public universities have subsidies from the government. Private universities don't have any subsidies. I think around the world, philanthropy and creating a culture of philanthropy on our campuses and with our alumni and with the community, I think that's going to be part of our responsibility in the future. And during question and answer, you can ask questions about that. But I think understanding how to be a president who is also creating a culture of philanthropy and raising money will help the institution. And then I'm going to talk about living up to your ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese word, which I'll talk about. And when I say ikigai, people say, is that somebody you dated in high school? No, I didn't date an ikigai, but ikigai is a Japanese word meaning purpose and being purpose-driven, and we'll talk about that. And finally, how to communicate as a leader who has principle, integrity, courage, and vision. Okay, turning the page. So, I chose to step away from my university, the University of Laverne, after 12 and a half years as the president. And when I stepped away, first of all, I had been, I don't know if Adriana said this, but I was a professor of intercultural communication. That's driven my life forever, how different people from different genders, different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds can come together and communicate across their lines of difference and get to a better place together. That's why I became a professor of intercultural communication. I was a professor and a vice provost for 17 years at Portland State University, and then I became a provost, which was the vice president for academic affairs, in New York City at Wagner College for 8 years. Public university, Portland State University, private university, Wagner College, and then 12 plus years at the University of Laverne as a president. After all those decades in higher education, I said, I'm going to step back and I'm going to retire. I never use that word retire. I say rewire, because if you retire, it sounds like I'm just going to sit back. I didn't want to just sit back. I wanted to rewire and continue to contribute to higher education. So about 6 months before I rewired, I was with a man, many of you may know him, President Fernando Leon Garcia from Setish University, and I said to him, Fernando, it's February, and we were at ACE, Arturo was there, and I said, I am a free agent, so to speak, after when I step away from the presidency. And I said, do you have, and Fernando at the time was president of CETIS and the International Association of University Presidents. And I said to Fernando, can I help? What can I do with IAUP, the International Association of University Presidents? And he said, you know, he's such a visionary leader, Fernando. And he said, I'd like you to be in charge of a woman's initiative. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. What does that mean? And he said, we need more women presidents around the world, and those women presidents need other female presidents so that they can support each other and everybody succeed. And I said, wow, I like that. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I'm all in, Fernando. And Arturo, he was there at that meeting. So at the first, it was in Japan. Were you at the Japan meeting? So in Japan, oh yeah, I remember. So in Japan, it was the first foray into saying, how do I do what Fernando has asked me to do? Have women come together, have women support one another, and also have women lay the groundwork, as somebody said in the last panel, sow the seeds and then harvest for the future. How can I help make that happen in IAUP? And what I love about that is IAUP is the only president's association. It's not a university association or an institutional association. It's a president's association in the world, which is pretty darn amazing. So at that first meeting in Japan, I had a panel of women who talked about what it's like to be a female president. And one was from Bangladesh, one was from South Korea, one was from Lithuania, another one, and then myself. As I listened to them speak, I said, wow, they're all from different countries. They had been presidents at different lengths of time. And I said, I am hearing some common trends that they didn't talk to each other before they stood up and spoke in Japan. And I said, there is a book here for each of these women to tell their stories, and I'll then pull out the common trends and the common themes across all of these women. So that year, we published a book, and we called it Spotlighting Female Leadership, Strategies, Stories, Perspectives. And these were the themes of the 10 women. And on your seats, there is a handout that has not just the 10 themes or the themes that came out from these 10 women who were interviewed, one of them from Mexico, Silvia Iorguli. My pronunciation, again, don't apologize, but I have to. So these 10 women had these common themes across all of their presidencies. ACE, the American Council on Education, probably the largest higher education organization in the world, ACE was so interested in this book that they selected 3 of the women, one from Turkey, Sylvia from Mexico, and Bangladesh. So these women did podcasts for ACE so that ACE could help to raise the visibility of these female presidents from around the world. So the common themes, every one of these women were the first president in their institution. As you heard from the last panel and as you all experience, if you're the first president or female president, not the first president of the institution, but the first female president, you know the uphill battle that you have. You know that you're under a microscope. You know that people are questioning you more than they might a man. You know all of those things. That came out through all of this. The second was that every single one of these authors, and I interviewed them and then they wrote their chapters, they were dedicated to a higher purpose. And if you want to read their stories behind these common themes, you can, there's a, what's that called? QR code on that, and you can go to that and you can download the book. They were all dedicated to a higher purpose. Almost all of them talked about either having an executive coach or being mentored along the way. And they were proud of that. So many times they kind of hide it, that there's a weakness. I need a coach or I need a mentor. There's nothing. How many of you feel that there's someone in your life who has mentored you along the way to be in the position you are? Raise your hand if you've ever had a mentor, someone that you think is a mentor to you. I've had many, starting with probably my mother. Every one of them talked about how important it is to listen, listen, listen. That's how you build trust. Coming in with the answer and not listening, it doesn't build the trust. Every single one of them. The three words that came up more often than any of the other words about the essential attributes of being a female president were humility. It's not that you have to apologize or not, as somebody said, not brag, but it's saying accomplishments, but doing it in a way, and you'll hear about this on the next slide when I compare the males to the female presidents, doing it with humility. So it's not all about you, but it's the accomplishments that happened during their presidency. They may have led the initiative, but it took a collaboration across the entire campus for the accomplishments to happen. Empathy, truly listening and understanding the other's perspective and building and gaining trust along the way. It can take years to build trust, but you can lose trust at the speed of light. How can you build that trust and keep the trust? It's through ongoing humility, ongoing empathy, ongoing listening. The stories from these 10 female presidents all support that. Most of the presidents talked about the imposter syndrome. I never really, how did I I felt like I was wearing brown shoes at a black tie event. How did I get to be in this position? Did I really deserve it? Have I really earned it? Do I really belong? I don't know if I'm speaking to, if anybody's saying, I felt that way. I woke up this morning and I said, oh, my gosh, am I really going to be the speaker to 85 amazing women? Do I deserve that? I thought that this morning, and I'm still thinking it as I'm standing here. So all of us have these little niggling thoughts in the back of our minds, not every person, but every one of the women in the chapters that are in this book. External perceptions, they all talked about biases. Others had expectations of them because you are a woman, and these expectations also come along with biases. They expect you to behave a certain way, act a certain way, and I'll tell the story now. And I was telling Adriana at the break, when I interviewed at the University of Laverne, it was, I started in 2011, so I interviewed in 2010. And at private universities in the United States, you interview on the campus, but the Board of Trustees selects who the president is. So and the finalists, there were 3 finalists. The finalists obviously are not in the room, but after they called me and said, the board has selected you, and they would like you to be the next president of the University of Laverne. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. I accepted the position. And I got to be very close with the chair of the Board of Trustees, because the president and the chair meet all the time. And he told me that during that session where they were choosing of the 3 candidates, 2 presidents, I was a provost, 1 president was African American, male, the 2nd president was Latino, male, the 3rd candidate was female, and not a president, me. And he said that when they were they were debating which one to hire. The university is 135 years old. Every president prior to that president had been male. So when the board was voting, 3 of the board members, the rest of the board members, and there were probably 30 board members, 27 of the board members said, we would like Devorah Lieberman to be the next president. 3 board members, all male, had been prior to this one. 3 board members said to the rest of the board, well, we can go from male to female, but we cannot vote to have a Jewish president. Every president had been Christian, and so what do you think about that? Oh, Natalia said awful. And I wanted to say, but I'm not Jewish, but that's not true, I am. So I said to the board chair, well, what did the rest of the board say to those 3 who said, we can't have a Jew, but we can have a woman? And the rest of the board said, then you don't need to be on the board. And the 3 who voted against walked out. So why do I bring this up now? Because there were biases that were clouding their perception of, in my opinion, of who their next president should be. They could go from male to female, but they couldn't have a person who had a certain religion. So every time you walk into a room as a female president, whether you realize it or not, people are looking at your hair, your clothes, the way you walk, what you say. There are biases, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but biases are part of our world. So I went into that presidency knowing that there were some biases. If those 3 board members thought that, there were probably a lot of faculty, staff, and community members who might be thinking the same thing. Going in knowing that there are biases, it's okay. It's how you deal with those biases, in my opinion, that makes the difference, so that you're not angry. I wasn't angry. By the way, those 3 who got off the board and disengaged from the university, I met with those 3 for lunch and dinner. I drove 3 hours several times to where one of them lived. And at the end of that next year, those 3 who got off the board all apologized to me, and 2 of them became donors to the university where they hadn't been before. So it's knowing that there are biases and not being angry. It's dealing with those biases in a way that you can all move forward through communication, listening, and empathy. And finally, all those women, all 10 women in this book, talked about how they had to continue to prove themselves along the way. And as you can see, those 10 women were from Mexico, Bangladesh, the US, South Korea, Spain, Turkey, and Lithuania. So, is Sylvia here today? Oh, well, you'll have to tell her we talked about her a lot. Yeah, she's great. Is she still president? Oh, well, she was fabulous. Okay. So after that year, I said to IAUP. Wow, well, that female book was pretty successful and got really positive feedback. Why don't we do the same, and I'll interview 13 male presidents and see if there's any differences in the trends. So here are the differences that I saw. The 13 male presidents, by the way, and this book, the first book was published by IAUP on their website. This book got picked up by Bloomsburg Press and by the American Council on Education. They publish 3 books a year that are part of their educational series, ACE. So this book, comparing male to female presidencies and their attributes, etc., will be coming out this year. So I'm very excited about this because this will really help to elevate what we're talking about today. And I had to be kind of, not political, but I had to be thoughtful and strategic in the language I used for the comparisons. But I don't need to be as thoughtful and strategic with this group today, okay? But in the book, I'm much more gentle. So, this book is called Guided by Principle, Driven by Change, Insights on Leadership from Global University Presidents. It'll probably be coming out, we're in September, probably in December. So the countries, the male presidents are from China, Morocco, Australia, Bangladesh, Mexico, Fernando Leon Garcia, Spain, Japan, Ecuador, Colombia, the U.S., South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the country of Georgia. It's kind of cool, isn't it? From around the world. So the differences that came up in general is I had said that the women said that they had mentors along the way and coaches. And the women had also talked about, as you did this morning, the importance of also helping to lift others and mentoring others in general, but with a focus on women. So the women had talked about that in their chapters. The men, I don't want to overspeak. I don't think one man talked about being mentored, not one. All the men talked about how important it was for them to coach others. So it was interesting to me that they didn't think they were coached along the way and they didn't need it, but that others needed to be coached and they were there to be their coach. You can put any explanation on that you want. My explanation is, I don't need it, others do need it. That's my personal explanation. All of them talked about being presidents because there was a greater purpose, and that they saw that their role was to lead for the university and not just lead for themselves. The women had talked about humility, empathy, and trust. The men added to it to be patient, to recognize emotional intelligence, to have integrity and perseverance. So if this truly was that the men felt that they needed to have patience, emotional intelligence, integrity, and perseverance, this leads me to think that it's very, as we said in the last session, it doesn't have to be a competition, it should be a collaboration. It leads me to think that there are attributes that can be more associated with males than with females, but how wonderful it would be if we didn't say I have to be more male-like or I have to be more female-like, but all of us, I know it's a little pie in the sky and it's a little rose-colored glasses, but if all of us said, what are the attributes that could truly make me and help me be the best leader possible, and look at those attributes and say, which attributes could I learn to have more as part of my leadership style and my leadership toolkit. I found this very, very interesting. Paths to the presidency. The women all talked, and think about your own path to your presidency, which we're going to talk about later as you kind of lay out your own path. None of the women said that when they were young, they said, I want to be a university president, and I'm going to envision the path to go from being a college student to a professor to a department chair to a dean to a provost to a president, a very traditional path. All of the women talked about opportunities that opened up for them, and for many of them, actually most of them, they talked about others seeing something in them and saying, you know, you would be a good department chair. Have you thought about that? And they all gave examples like that. And so for them, opportunities were created along the way, and they didn't envision such a linear path. For the men, most of the men said, I saw my path to becoming a president. It wasn't that others necessarily opened doors for me, which I'm sure they did along the way, but they did not see themselves as, they saw themselves as having a more linear path and creating their own opportunities along the way. Women, more non-linear, others seeing some, and I could give 1,000 examples, and I'm sure many of you could also, others seeing things in you that you didn't necessarily see in yourself, strengths that you maybe saw but didn't make so apparent. Others saw that in you. The sixth one, the I language versus the we language. The women in the female chapters said, here's what we, under my leadership, here's what we accomplished. Most of the men said, here's what I accomplished. Any heads? We're not talking about Arturo, the only man in the audience. We're talking about the others. So for the women, it was much more of a collective, that the collective accomplished this under my leadership, and for the men, it was much more individualistic. Finally, the women, as I said before, felt like they had the imposter syndrome and needed to prove themselves. Not one male, they may have felt it, so I just want a disclaimer. They may have felt these things but didn't articulate them, but not one man talked about the imposter syndrome or feeling that they needed to prove themselves. And finally, earned versus privileged leadership. The women felt like, you know, I earned my way along this path. And for several of the men, they felt like it was almost their destiny, and it was just an expectation that they would keep ascending into the presidency. And for the women, they earned it along the way by proving themselves. So that was the male, the female. How are we doing? Is my 2 hours up yet? No, we're doing fine though. One. Okay, so I'm moving to this culture of philanthropy. Oh. So as I said before, so when I came into the presidency at the University of Laverne, the endowment has to do with the money that's raised to be used not necessarily for operating budget, but to be used to build buildings, to hire more faculty, to have money for research, money that might not be in your operating budget and is not necessarily given to you by the state. So I learned early on, when I came into the University of Laverne, the endowment at the time was $36 million, and you don't use that $36 million, you use the interest that is yielded off of that $36 million, and that interest can be used then unrestricted for the things that you want to use it for or that the donors want to use it for. So it was $36 million. When I left the university, the endowment was $151 million. So that is a lot. Under my leadership, we raised about $170 million, and that $170 million went to the endowment and buildings, because if you raise $15 million cash for a building, then that can't go in the endowment because it's used to build the building. I bring this up because I think, and I can't talk about Mexico, but I think in the future, as budgets get more and more restricted and restrictive, there may be a place for presidents to really create a culture of philanthropy. Because when I first started thinking about how do we raise money, or how do we have money to build these buildings, to create these faculty lines, to have more money for faculty research, and first and foremost, to have money for student scholarships so that students don't have to pay so much to go in tuition. So I said, well, do we raise that money? And then I said, ooh, that feels kind of like a car salesperson, that you're asking people for money. And then I realized it was a beautiful thing, and people who were passionate about any of these projects, who either alumni, people in the community, corporations, organizations. So for example, I'll take Santander Banks and Arturo. Arturo is a philanthropist because he knows that the dollars that he contributes to this organization, to IEAUP and others, those dollars are going to help lift the whole organization. So Arturo understands what it means to be a true philanthropist. As a president, if there's an institution like Laverne that had never really raised money in the past, people were like, why is she out there raising so much money? But I worked hard to create on the campus a culture of philanthropy, so everybody understood how dollars that came in to the university that weren't from tuition and then weren't from the state or the federal government, those dollars could help us. And those 4 areas that I believe raise the institution the most with philanthropy and create where everybody on campus says, this is a good thing for our campus and for our students and for our faculty and for our staff. So when more dollars come in, you can use those dollars to truly help raise the reputation and the quality of the institution, because you have more money for research. You have more money to hire more faculty to renovate buildings and to give student scholarships. The second, to create a culture of philanthropy, is it isn't one person. It's not just the president. It truly is an effective and collaborative leadership. So when I would meet with donors, I wouldn't meet with them alone. I would bring a faculty member with me in that area of research. I would bring someone from the board. It wasn't about the president asking for money. It was truly creating a collaboration on the campus, so the donor or the corporation or the foundation saw how important this was to the campus and then understood how it would help the entire university. The third was to build this culture of philanthropy, you need to create a robust and major gifts program. So expect people on your staff to do more. You have to find the dollars and dedicate those dollars to creating a division or an office, a small group of individuals that will help you as the president and the campus to identify the donors, to connect with all the alumni. The University of Laverne has about 100,000 alumni and living alumni, and I wanted to connect with every single one, because an alumnus who gives $10, that $10 may be important, or I'll say 10 pesos, may be as important to that person as 1,000 pesos to somebody else who has more money. So it's that feeling, it's a gift. When they give a gift, they feel like they're getting a gift because they're helping an institution that they love. And when the university is good to the graduate feels good giving back to the university. And that leads to the last one, engage donors and volunteers. And they would raise their hands and say, how can I help? What can I do? How can I help you and the campus raise money? So I probably spent the last number of years of my presidency, 50% of my time off campus, meeting with alumni, with donors. I know, that's, okay, Arturo's looking, and saying nobody has 50% of their time to give off campus. Yeah, but it worked. And so you don't have to give 50%. Sometimes I gave 10, sometimes I gave 80. But I knew that it was a very, very high priority. So when I showed some other individuals this slide deck, and I said, I'm going to talk about culture of philanthropy in Mexico, they said to me, yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. So if this doesn't work for you and your personality on your campus, of course, that's fine. It didn't work at the University of Laverne, but then it did work at the University of Laverne. So when the campus and the board and the alumni and the students saw the benefits, it was really golden. Okay. Now, back to you. I've spoken a lot, and I didn't even think I was going to speak this long. So everyone has their own journey and your own leadership journey. So I'm going to spend just a minute, and I want you to think about yours. So for those of you who are taking notes, write down on your paper, childhood, formative years, adult years. So I'm going to just highlight my leadership journey, because in the prior panel, when somebody said, we really are a product of who we were and what we learned and sort of what became part of our DNA when we were children. So when I was a little girl, my childhood, and I think about this all the time, every Saturday morning in my household, my parents, my father in particular, would sit down with the 3 children. I have 2 older brothers and myself, and he would say, my mother would be sitting on his side, and he would say to the 3 of us, when I was really young, like 5 years old and up, every Saturday, well, to be honest, my brothers would say, my 2 older brothers, can't we just go out and play? And my father would say, no, you have to sit here. And I would say, okay. So that's a little insight into family dynamics between brothers and sisters. And my parents would say, there's a Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam, which means heal the world, repair the world. And my mother and father would say to me every single week, you, Devorah, Jay, and Alan, you have one obligation, you have one responsibility in life. And that one responsibility is where the world is broken, where the world needs to be repaired, you have to be the one to help repair it and fix it. I never imagine hearing that every Saturday for like 10 years. That has to have an effect on you. So as I made my choices, those were my childhood years. My formative years, so I graduated from high school. A year after I graduated from high school, I moved to Israel, and I lived in Israel on a kibbutz for a year. Then I moved to Switzerland, and I got my master's degree, and I taught in Switzerland for a year. Then I moved to Greece, and I taught at the University in Athens for 5 years. I tell you this because it was my time in Israel, my time in Switzerland, and my time in Greece that I said, tikkun olam, where can I begin to heal where things are broken? And what I saw was the conflicts, the Israelis and the Arabs. Even in Switzerland, there's 4 parts of Switzerland, the Romanche, the Italians, the Swiss-speaking, the French-speaking, and the German-speaking. So you've got your 4. I saw differences there that were conflicts that I said, if they just communicated with one another, they could avoid this. And when I lived in Greece, I saw that with Greece and Turkey and other Middle Eastern countries. And I said, I'm going to come back to the United States. I'm going to get my doctorate in intercultural communication because that may give me the tools to heal the world and repair the world in my own little way. During that time, so I got my doctorate, I said I'll become a professor and teach intercultural communication. Others saw things in me I didn't see in myself, and they said, oh, you should be a department chair, you should be a vice provost, you should be a provost, you can be a president. And as others saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, I never forgot tikkun olam. How can I heal the world and repair the world? So that was what led me to where I am today, leaving the University of Laverne, and then saying, if I can still not be retired but rewired, where can I continue to have an impact, a positive impact? So IAUP said, will you be a senior consultant with the women's initiatives? I said, that is a tikkun olam, yes. ACE, that huge organization, said, will you be the senior consultant to the president? Well, I didn't vote for him. Trump got elected, and I said, yes, I think I can help with ACE. Phoenix Philanthropy, the fundraising group, said, will you help us help presidents raise money? I said, yes. And then Harvard University said, will you be a president in residence and work with our doctoral students who want to become presidents? And I said, yes. I only said yes because I felt like it was part of this path I'd been following my entire life. From the time I was 5 years old to my age today. We don't have to talk about that. But 5 years old till today. So you wrote down on your paper childhood, formative years, and your adult professional choices. So now take 5 minutes and write down what you think were things that impacted you as a child that you're still holding on to today. And you can say nothing, but if you can think of things. In your formative years, how did that impact you or drive you? And in your professional choices today, as a president or deans or others who aspire to go on. And then take 5 minutes or so. And I'm seeing some faces saying, this is a class assignment. Okay? We'll take 4 minutes. And then when you're all done, I want you to share that with the person next to you, if you feel comfortable doing that. Okay, we're back in session. Okay, now we're moving to the next participatory part. We have another few minutes that's about you. But somebody just reminded me to tell you a story that I meant to and then I forgot. When we were talking about bias, and I said everybody, when some people say, oh, I don't see color, I don't see gender, I don't see body size, I don't see age. Whether we want to or not, we do see it. It's what we do with it and how we recognize it and how we sort of recognize, is it impacting how we treat others? But it's also, when you're a female president, realizing that others are seeing their own bias about you. So when I was at Laverne, the first time I was introduced to we had, I'm going to say, maybe 600 adjunct faculty and 300 faculty. So I was being introduced to the faculty. And the head of the faculty, one of the male faculty members, lovely man, said he was selected to introduce me, just like Andriana was introduced me today, even though I understood what he said. But I'll read the translation later. And so when he introduced me, he said to the faculty, and I was sitting there, and I'd been on campus for, 2 weeks, and he said, "I'm so honored to introduce you to our 18th president." The first president at the time was 119 years, the university. The first president in 119 years who gets her nails done and has long hair. Please welcome President Devorah Lieberman. And I went up to the stage and I said thank you, and I welcomed everybody and all that. But afterwards, how I responded, I'm proud of how I responded, because when he first introduced me, I was like, what? In my inside, I said, what? That's how he's introducing me? And then I went up and I gave my speech. And afterwards, when he and I were sitting quietly together, I said to him, "Al, I just want you to know, I appreciate that you introduced me, but I need to share with you that when you said, the only thing you said about me was about my nails and my hair," I said, "I felt like I had prepared my entire professional life to be a president. And it didn't have anything to do with my hair, my gender, or my nails. So I need you to understand that, so that he was the president of the Senate, so that we can work together." And he said, "Wow, Devorah, I never thought about that." So I share that with you because when someone, I think maybe it's because of my childhood and because of my intercultural communication, part of our responsibility is to educate the other, to recognize their own biases, and to recognize our own as well and our own perspectives, so that we can work together to the benefit of the university. So that's why I shared that part with you. I forgot to say that before. So now to the next part. Did you like that sharing and identifying your own pivotal moments and saying, "Oh my God, I never really thought about that"? So, how's that translation doing? It's not great? Sorry. Okay, well, I can't control that. AI, but look how much money we're saving because we didn't have to hire translators with the, so see, we're saving the operating budget of the university. Oh, here's where we are. So now, I talked about the women who said in those 10 chapters, empathy, humility, listening, collaboration as opposed to competition. So I would like you to think about truly and honestly, what are 3 adjectives that you feel like you embody in your leadership style and approach to leading your university, your college, your school, or your department? So write down 3 leadership adjectives that describe you, because I want you to embrace those adjectives. They're not negative, they are part of your superpower. I want you to think about what you did before, pivotal moments. Write down pivotal moments if you want to write down a few pivotal moments. And then on this, related to those pivotal moments on your journey, when, why, and how. When did you recognize that this was a pivotal moment? Why do you think it's a pivotal moment? And how did you position yourself in that pivotal moment to really embrace those attributes so that you can be the best leader of your college, your school, or your university that you can possibly be? 3 adjectives, some pivotal moments. And on that journey, those pivotal moments, when were they? Why did you make those choices? Why did they happen? And how did you position yourself at that time? You can do anything you want with that, but think about your 3 adjectives, the pivotal moments, and in that journey, when did it happen? why did it happen, and how did you recognize it? How did you position yourself in that moment to ascend and be the best leader that you can be? So your adjectives, a few pivotal moments, and on this journey, when it happened, why you think it happened, and how you positioned yourself. Okay, this is your time. It's not easy, and it's not therapy. You can pay a therapist. I'm not getting paid. You can pay your therapist for this. Okay, so do that on your paper. Okay. We're going to have lunch soon, so you can continue this conversation at lunch. Comida. Did I read that right? Yeah. Look, I'm fluent. 5 hours in Mexico, I'm learning the language. Okay, we're moving along. We're coming toward the end. Okay, I want to share with you quickly lessons that I learned, and there are many. I mean, there are things I'm so proud of. There are other things that I fell down, I tripped, I picked myself up, others helped me to believe in myself, I dusted myself off, I kept going. So we all have lessons that we learned along our own leadership journey. So here's some of my main lessons. Humility. You do not, as the president or the head of the organization, it's not all about you. You don't have to be front and center. I think we all know that, but, and I really don't think I was guilty of this, but I saw it in others that came into a presidency and they felt like they had to discount everything prior to them, and it was all about the initiatives that they were proposing. In my opinion, the most successful presidents, rectors, leaders are those who truly, authentically recognize the successes of those who came before them, because you truly stand on the shoulders of giants. So recognizing publicly those who came before you, and then you're there to take the university or the institution to the next step, and eventually you're going to hand it to somebody else, and you'll hand it to them as a gift. So every year at the University of Laverne, we had a gala, a huge gala, to raise money for scholarships. We called it the Scholarship Gala. I'm proud that the last one, that one night we raised $1.9 million. That's not a lesson learned, it's a moment of pride. I'm sharing that with you for student scholarships. But every year at the gala, the president prior to me, I would buy his tickets, his seats. I would invite him and his wife to sit at the head table with me, because at the gala, when I would speak, I always wanted to recognize him and his wife in front of 2,000 people, so that I could stand on his shoulders, and people could see what he did, what was happening under my leadership, and then what would happen after my leadership by somebody else. So always be humble, recognizing the past and the present. And it's like real estate. You own that real piece of real estate for a certain period of time, and then you're going to give it to somebody else. So you're part of a whole trajectory of presidents. The second is be authentic. If you try to fake it, your personality is your personality, and be yourself. Do what you say and say what you do. Like if you say you're going to do something, then truly do it and be authentic. I know that I think my personality is I like to be very human, I'm vulnerable, I'm very relational, and people would say, wow, you're too friendly. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how not to be friendly. So recognize those attributes that make you who you are. Sometimes you have to pick them up, and sometimes you have to tone them down, but be your authentic self. People will respect you and trust you more, I think, if they say this is really who she is. The next one I said is major in a mission. When I'd walk on campus every day, I took many of my meetings with the other vice presidents. I'd say, let's walk on campus and just walk so people see us talking and we can talk to people as we walk around. And I would stop students, and I never said to a student, what's your major? In Mexico, we have majors, like sociology, psychology. We don't? Okay. Well, that was a misstep. I'm not sure what we have in Mexico. But in the U.S., you major in psychology or business or nursing. You choose a major. I never said to a student, what's your major? I'd stop and I'd say, hi, what's your name? Where do you call home? And then I would say, what's your mission? And they would say, what's my mission? I'd say, yeah. Well, how do you want to change the world? What do you want to do to have an impact and help the world? And they'd say, oh, I don't know. And then they would answer me, and I would say, and they would say things like, well, I want the underserved I want the underserved in my community to have more opportunity. And I'd say, okay, our job at the university is to help you select a major and the courses so you can achieve your mission. So I ask you, did you become a president because you wanted to be a president or because you wanted to do a presidency? A lot of people choose to become a president because they like the title, president. Well, once you're a president, the next day you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I now have that responsibility. I am the president. So I for myself said, Tikkun Olam, how am I going to repair the world? The presidency is a path to help me do that. So I leave you with a lesson I learned, and that is major in your mission, and then choose those things that will help you help the world in the way that you want to help the world. The fourth thing is pay attention to what you're measured on. Just like the people who report to you, they pay attention to what you're measuring them on. So I knew by the end, I was being measured on how much money I raised, how often we were in the media, the number of students, were we always in the black and not in the red with the budget. I knew what I was being measured on. So my lesson to you is make sure you know what you're being measured on by your board, by the people who evaluate you annually or however you're evaluated. Pay attention to what you're measured on. And last, I started this with wear your bifocals as the leader. If you only focus on what needs to happen right now, you end up micromanaging. If you only focus on what the university is going to be in 5 or 10 years, you lose sight of what has to happen right now. You, as the chief executive officer of your organization, you have to wear your bifocals so that you can delegate to the people around you what has to happen now, and you measure them on that, and you lead with vision so that the whole institution trusts you and follows you. Those are some of my lessons learned along the ways, and always leading with principle so that you live your own principles, you lead with integrity, because if you don't have integrity, you don't have anything. That is what if you don't lead with integrity, you lose the trust of all your followers. You lead with courage. Years ago, when my mother was very close to her sister, and to my aunt, her sister, I wear this little butterfly on my neck, and her sister wore this butterfly her whole adult life. And when her sister, my aunt, passed away, my mother wore this butterfly every single day. And when my mother was in hospice, about a week before she passed away, 2 weeks. She said, Devorah, sit next to me on the bed. She took off her butterfly, she put it on me, and she said, this will help you always live tikkun olam. This will always help you face your challenges with courage and integrity. So I think about that. What do you think about when you have to make a tough decision? Where do you get your courage? Because it's hard to stand up when people are yelling at you and questioning you and criticizing you, and you hadn't slept the night before because everybody was yelling at you. Where do you pull into yourself to find that courage and have the integrity to stand up for your own principles? Okay, I wasn't intending to tell that story about my mother, but I'm with all my sisterhood here. And finally, the last slide. Oh, I'm supposed to point. Oh, no. Oh my gosh, backwards. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I thought I messed up the last slide. Okay. The year before I decided to rewire, I read a book called The Ikigai. And Ikigai, it's a long story. You can just Google it and you can read the one paragraph in the Wikipedia. You don't have to buy the book. But in Japan, in this blue zone where people live very, very long, they have longevity, they interviewed all these people who lived to very old ages, and they discovered that they all had a common ikigai, a common purpose. And they said, what they found out was these people in their careers only said yes to things where they were really good, they excelled at something. It gave them great joy. So I love singing, and I have a terrible voice, so I shouldn't sing. So I excel at loving singing. I don't excel at having a good voice. So where do you excel? Sorry. Wow. What do you excel at? Where do you get the greatest joy? So they said you have to excel. So there are 4 legs to the purpose-driven stool. They only said yes if they were really good at it, if they loved it, if it had a positive impact, and if they were compensated or, well, in their lives, because it was in their careers, they had to have monetary remuneration, so they had to be compensated. I translated that, and I said, I'm only going to say yes if I think I'm good at it, if it gives me great joy, if I can have a positive impact, and if I feel valued or appreciated. I've said no to a lot of things because they don't fit my ikigai. So when Arturo said to me, will you speak to 85 women leaders in Mexico, I said, that will give me great joy. I don't want to exaggerate, but I think I'm pretty good at talking about that. I want to leave you with with the skills and the things to take with you to improve your leadership after today. And I never said, oh, do I get compensated for this? What do I get? I said, all I want is to be valued and appreciated for flying down here and giving my time. So I leave you with my ikigai, and I ask you to examine your own ikigai and say, what are you good at? What do you love doing? How are you going to make an impact? And how do you want to be valued, appreciated, or recognized? So thank you so much for giving me your time. today, and I stand between you and the comida. Thank you.
Agradecemos la participación de la doctora Lieberman. En este momento daremos paso a un espacio de 2 preguntas para quien guste realizarlo. Por favor de levantar su mano, por favor.
I have my translator just in case. Oh my gosh, that's upsetting. Come on. Oh, yay. Okay, we have 2 questions. Yes. Do we need a microphone? Okay, great. Can you stand up and tell us your name also and your university?
Spanish or English?
Whatever you feel most comfortable.
First in Spanish and then in English, it's okay?
Okay, perfect.
Muy buenas tardes a todas y todos. Lilian Kravtsov, Universidad Abierta y a Distancia de México. Y la pregunta para mí, I'm coming.
Okay, okay, great.
Que yo le haría es, ¿qué experiencia ha tenido con otras mujeres, compañeras, parte del equipo, y cuál sería su reflexión? I'm from the Distance Education University in Mexico. My name is Lilian. And I would like to ask you about your relationship with other women being presidents or deans or leaders. How has been that experience?
That is a great question. It's a mixed bag for me. When I was a faculty member, and I say baby faculty member, meaning I was an assistant professor, the president of Portland State, I never really, up till that point, I'd never seen women as sort of something I should emulate or wanting to mentor me. The president at at Portland State said to me, Devorah, I want you to help me be a better communicator, and I want to help you with what you're doing as you ascend into associate, not provost, associate professor, and then full professor. And so I watched this woman, and I said, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn from her. She was great. I have found along the way, and I've always been really attracted to vulnerability and mentoring other women, being mentored, and so I've gotten very, very, very close to many other professional women in higher education. I've also found that women, for whatever the reason, can be your greatest critics and the first to criticize, as I said, critic, and stand in the way of your success. I've taken that in stride. I don't take that personally because I've said something I learned through Judith Romali, my president in Portland State, how to help others, male and female, but in particular in this instance women, and women who have really resented me or my successes or tried to be an obstacle. I've learned to just not, and it's hard, not to take it personally, not to get upset too much, and just move on. It's my simple answer. But it's hard because women can be your best friends or your greatest critics. That might not be in Mexico, but in my life. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, do I need to, was that being translated up here? Yes. Okay, great. You're
Una
doing a great
pregunta
job.
más, por favor.
Yo sí voy a hacer uso de, por favor, gracias, porque mi inglés es muy, muy malo. Soy Ana Laura, vengo de la Universidad YMCA Y lo que me gustaría preguntarle sería cuál ha sido la relación con el voluntariado dentro de estas universidades. Y lo digo principalmente porque dentro de nuestra universidad, gracias.
Oh.
Sí, gracias. Sí, gracias.
Or people volunteering?
People volunteering, voluntary work in universities. The second part.
Sí, ok. Lo digo principalmente la relación del voluntariado con la parte de los liderazgos, principalmente porque nosotros tenemos un programa internamente en la Universidad de Liderazgo y Voluntariado con los estudiantes y trabajamos las habilidades. ¿Sí? Y trabajamos las habilidades socioemocionales que necesitan para este liderazgo.
I love your question. Yo corazón, yo love your question. And the reason I love your question is because throughout my academic career, one of my mentors is President Judith Riley, who said, "Let knowledge serve the city." She said that when she was a president, "Let knowledge serve the city." I never forgot that. That became one of my guiding lights, my northern star. So when I became president at the University of Laverne, I wanted a collaborative effort. I didn't want to come down with just a directive. And I thought, and I don't say the word volunteer, because you could volunteer to do a beach cleanup. You could volunteer, students could volunteer to serve the homeless or the unhoused. I wanted students to do community-based learning, a kind of service learning, so that I did this at Wagner and at the University of Laverne, so that the students would take what they were learning and they would take what they were learning and do things in the community that were related to the course. They were graded on it because it was a participatory thing, and they would enhance the community, and it would help them learn their field better. So one little example, just an example of this, is the chemistry class. The chemistry students and the biology students would go to, well, it was two. One was the chemistry students would go to the local park, and the biology students would go to the local river, and the chemistry students would look for arsenic in the parks. And what they found was the parks that had the most underserved neighborhoods had more arsenic, I don't know why, than the parks that served the wealthier. And then they took what they learned, so they learned more about chemistry because of the arsenic, and they took what they learned and they went to the city council so that they could make their parks healthier and cleaner. They saw that they were learning chemistry better, and they were impacting their communities because of going to their city councils. With the river, it was called Tom's River, they went to the river, and the biology students, they analyzed the water, and they found all these toxic chemicals in the water, and this was an underserved area where the river was. The students went to Washington, D.C., and they presented their findings to the Environmental Protection Agency. So they learned more about biology, they learned about politics, and they made an impact. When I came to the University of Laverne, I wanted the faculty to institute the same kinds of things in their classes. And then before the semester started, and this is still going on, all the new students, so 900 new freshmen, would do a community-based learning day, and they would do things with their classes before their class had ever met in the community for the entire day, so they would have a socio-emotional connection with each other, with their faculty, and with the community. The university should not be separate from the community. The university's there to make the community better. Great question, thank you. And last but not least, I want to do a quick promotion. You have this IAUP, the International Association of University Presidents, and I was talking to Natalia, and she said they meet twice a year in different locations. She said, next month we're meeting in Korea, South Korea, and she said it's so expensive for us to fly to these locations, South Korea, India. We're meeting in Romania, I think, in the spring. That's a lot of budget for a president to fly. So I said to Natalia, what if every third year we meet at a university in Latin America so that you don't have to fly to these faraway places and everybody could come together? And I love this organization because you learn from each other and you sort of do student articulations and research, and Arturo is very deeply involved. So I encourage, this is my public service announcement. I would encourage you to consider joining IAUP, and then I'm going to take back to the president of IAUP that if we have every third year, just like this, at a university in Latin America that hosts it, then you would meet 300 presidents from other countries and universities to establish collaborations. So last but not least, I'm going to get the name right, President Claudia Susana Gomez Lopez, thank you for having me at your beautiful campus. Thank you so much. And Arturo, thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Carmen López Portillo. Le quiero hacer solamente 2 comentarios que su plática, que agradezco mucho, me dejaron. Hay un saludo maya en las comunidades mayas que es Inlak Esh, que quiere decir yo soy otro tú. A lo que la persona responde Halaken, que quiere decir yo soy otro tú. Halaken. Y otra cosa, George Steiner, un filósofo que admiro enormemente, tiene el concepto de la hospitalidad y sugiere que los seres humanos tenemos que aprender a dejar el lugar que visitamos mejor de cómo lo encontramos. Entonces, corresponde de alguna manera a lo que dijo. Le agradezco mucho su plática, la disfruté muchísimo y los ejercicios que nos sugirió fueron muy enriquecedores. Muchas gracias.
If I left you a little better than before I came, I thank you. Because you left me better. Thank you.